Subscribe to my YouTube channel, share it with your friends, and comment your thoughts. The small diner on the corner of Maple Street had always been a quiet place. Its neon sign flickered gently in the evening haze, welcoming the few late customers who wandered in after long shifts or lonely walks. Maggie had worked here for 3 years, pouring coffee, wiping tables, and greeting strangers with a tired but genuine smile. The job wasn't glamorous, never had been, but it was honest, and for Maggie, it was enough. That evening, the diner was nearly empty except for a few regulars lost in their own worlds. The radio played soft jazz in the background, and the scent of frying bacon filled the air. Maggie moved behind the counter, stacking clean mugs while glancing toward the front door. It was just past 8 p.m., and the chill of early autumn seeped in every time someone came in. Suddenly the bell above the door jingled softly. Maggie looked up to see a boy standing hesitantly by the entrance. He couldn't have been more than 10 or 11 years old, wearing clothes too large for him and shoes that had seen better days. His eyes were wide, uncertain, scanning the diner, like he was unsure if he belonged there. Maggie's heart tightened. The boy looked hungry, not just a little, but desperate. There was a thinness in his cheeks and a dullness in his gaze that told stories no child should have to carry. He shuffled toward the counter, and Maggie noticed the way his stomach growled quietly, almost painfully. "Hey there," Maggie said softly, wiping her hands on her apron. "What can I get for you?" The boy hesitated. "Do you have any food?" "I'm really hungry." Maggie glanced around. The diner wasn't busy, and there was plenty of food left. "Of course," she smiled. "What do you like?" "Anything," he whispered. Without a second thought, Maggie went to the kitchen and grabbed a plate. She made him a small sandwich, some fries, and poured a glass of milk. When she set the plate in front of him, the boy's eyes lit up for the first time. "Thank you," he said, voice barely audible. Maggie sat down a little distance away, watching him eat carefully, noticing how quickly he devoured the food, how his fingers trembled slightly as he reached for each bite. She wanted to say more, but words felt useless. Sometimes kindness was the only language that mattered. Suddenly the diner's door swung open again, and a man in a sharp suit stepped inside. He looked around quickly, his gaze settling on Maggie and the boy. His expression was cold, calculating. "You," he said sharply, pointing at Maggie. "Step outside, now!" Maggie's heart raced. "Excuse me?" The man's voice grew firmer. "I said outside, now!" The boy looked up, scared. Maggie stood, shielding him with her body. "Why?" she asked, voice trembling. "You're fired," the man said flatly. "For breaking rules." Maggie's mind spun. What rules? What had she done wrong? Feeding a customer without paying? The man sneered. "This isn't a charity." Maggie's eyes flashed with anger. "He's a kid, hungry. I couldn't just watch him starve." The man's jaw tightened. "Your actions bring liability to this diner. Pack your things." Maggie glanced at the boy, whose eyes were wide with fear and confusion. She felt a surge of protectiveness. "I'm sorry," the man added coldly. "You're done here." The man turned and left, slamming the door behind him. Maggie felt a mix of helplessness and fury. She grabbed her coat and walked out, the boy trailing behind her. Outside, the night air was crisp. Maggie looked up the street, trying to make sense of what had just happened. Suddenly, headlights flooded the diner's parking lot. 4 black SUVs pulled up, their engines humming low but ominous. The vehicles stopped and surrounded the diner, blocking all exits. Maggie froze, heart pounding. The SUV's windows were tinted, but from inside she could sense a dozen faces watching, waiting. The boy gripped her hand tightly. "What's happening?" Maggie swallowed hard. "I don't know, but whatever it is, we're not alone anymore." That night marked the beginning of a chain of events Maggie never could have imagined. The simple act of kindness, feeding a hungry child, had unleashed something far bigger. darker, and more dangerous than she ever expected. Who were those men in the SUVs? Why did they come for her? And most importantly, what was the secret behind that starving boy? As Maggie's story unfolded, so did a mystery that would take her deeper into a world she never knew existed. Maggie stood frozen in the cold night air, the boy's small hand clenched tightly in hers as the 4 black SUVs idled ominously around the diner. The usual quiet hum of the neighborhood was replaced by the low, threatening growl of the vehicle's engines, and a chill ran down Maggie's spine, one that had nothing to do with the autumn air. The boy looked up at her with wide, fearful eyes. Who are they?" he whispered. Maggie swallowed hard, unsure herself. "I don't know, but we need to be careful." The man who had fired her earlier emerged from the diner, this time flanked by a few other sharply dressed individuals. His face was unreadable, but his eyes held a cold warning. "You don't understand what you've done," he said quietly but firmly. "That boy, he's not just some starving kid. There's more to him than you realize." Maggie's heart pounded. "What do you mean? He's just a child." The man's gaze hardened. "He's connected to people you don't want to cross. You should leave before this gets worse." Before Maggie could respond, the front door of the diner burst open again. 2 men in black suits stepped out swiftly, their faces obscured by shadows. One held a device that looked like a walkie-talkie. "Everyone stay calm," one of them said sharply, his voice commanding. "We're here to protect the boy." "Protect him?" Maggie repeated, confusion and fear swirling in her mind. "From who?" The man looked at her, then at the boy. "From forces that want to hurt him. You need to trust us." Maggie looked down at the boy, whose hands trembled now, tears glistening in his eyes. She knew one thing for sure: this was no ordinary night, and that boy's story was far from simple. Inside one of the SUVs, Maggie and the boy were ushered into a dimly lit room. The interior was cold, sterile, with dark leather seats and tinted windows that kept the outside world at bay. The men who brought them in stayed nearby, watching closely but not speaking. Maggie's mind raced. Who was this boy? Why was he so important that strangers in black suits came to his defense? "Can you tell me your name?" Maggie asked gently. The boy nodded hesitantly. "I'm Eli." "Eli," Maggie repeated softly. "Do you know why those men came for you?" Eli shook his head. "I don't know. I was just hungry, and then everything happened." Maggie looked into his eyes, searching for answers that weren't there. But then a faint sound crackled over a radio nearby, breaking the silence. "Command to Team Alpha," a voice said urgently. "Subject Eli has been located. Initiate containment protocol immediately." Maggie's heart skipped. Containment protocol? What does that mean? One of the men standing by the door turned to her. "Eli is not just a boy. He's connected to a secret program, something government level. His life is in danger because he possesses information others want." Maggie shook her head, struggling to process it all. "I don't understand. What kind of information? And why was he starving?" The man's face was grim. "Eli's past is complicated. He's been on the run for months, hiding from powerful enemies who want to capture him." "Why didn't anyone help him sooner?" Maggie asked, voice cracking. The IU man hesitated. "Because this is all very sensitive. Not many people know the truth. We've been tracking him, but until now, no one dared approach. Your kindness, changed that." Maggie looked at Eli, whose small hands were clenched tightly in his lap. "We'll protect you," she said quietly, more to herself than to anyone else. Hours passed inside the SUV's confined space. Outside, the black vehicles remained parked, silent guardians in the night. Maggie and Eli sat in uneasy silence until a woman entered, her face calm but eyes sharp. "I'm Agent Carter," she introduced herself. "I'm here to help you both. Maggie, your actions were brave, but you need to understand the danger we're facing." Maggie nodded. Please, tell me everything. Agent Carter took a deep breath and began. Eli is the key to a project called Phoenix. It's a covert operation that deals with classified technology that could change the world or destroy it. Eli's father was involved in the project and was forced to go into hiding. Eli has been trying to find safety ever since. Maggie's mind spun. So, he's like a target? Yes. Many want to capture him to gain control of the information he carries. We're part of a team trying to keep him safe. Eli looked up, voice barely a whisper. I just want to be normal. Agent Carter's expression softened. We'll do everything we can to make sure you are. Days blurred together. Maggie found herself caught between worlds she never imagined, the quiet life of a waitress and the shadowy realm of secret agents and danger. The diner, once a simple refuge, now felt like a distant memory. As Maggie grew closer to Eli, she learned more about his struggles, how he had been alone, scared, and hungry. Feeding him that night had been a small act of kindness that spiraled into a life-changing journey. But danger was never far. Every time they thought they were safe, new threats emerged, whispers of betrayal, shadowy figures in the night, and the looming presence of the unknown enemies who wanted Eli vanished only moments before. One evening, as Maggie sat beside Eli in the safe house, a call came through on Agent Carter's phone. The voice on the other end was urgent. They found us, the agent said grimly. Prepare for extraction. We don't have much time. Maggie looked at Eli, who was clutching a small, worn toy, a reminder of the childhood he barely had. We going to be okay? He asked. Maggie forced a smile. We have to be, together. Outside, the night was thick with tension. The black SUVs roared to life, engines blazing as they sped away into the darkness. Maggie held Eli close, feeling the weight of the unknown pressing down. Questions swirled. Who were the men chasing them? What was the secret Eli held? And how far would Maggie go to protect a boy she barely knew but already cared for deeply? As the SUVs disappeared into the night, one thing was certain. Their lives had changed forever, and the journey was only just beginning. The SUV hurtled down the winding roads beneath a blanket of stars, its tinted windows shielding Maggie and Eli from the dark world outside. Inside the vehicle, the air was thick with tension and the quiet hum of the engine, broken only by the occasional voice of the agents coordinating their next move. Maggie glanced at Eli, who sat silently beside her, clutching a small, ragged stuffed bear close to his chest. His eyes were wide but tired, haunted by nights spent on the run, by hunger, by fear. She wished she could shield him from all of it. From the darkness closing in, Agent Carter sat across from them, eyes sharp, fingers tapping rapidly on a tablet. We've arranged for a safe house, she said quietly. Remote, secure, off the grid. You'll be safe there, at least for now. Maggie nodded, her mind racing. Safe. That word felt fragile in a world where black SUVs chased shadows, and secrets could kill. At the safe house, Maggie was introduced to a world she never knew existed. It was a modest cabin nestled deep in the woods, surrounded by tall trees and silence. No internet, no phones, just old-fashioned security measures and trust. Inside, the rooms were sparse but warm. The walls held no pictures, no distractions. Only the bare essentials to keep its occupants alive and protected. Eli explored cautiously, running his fingers over the wooden tables, touching the worn furniture. Maggie watched him carefully, her heart aching. This boy, who had never known safety, was beginning to breathe a little easier. Do you want to talk about it? Maggie asked softly one evening, as Eli sat on the porch watching the stars. He hesitated, then nodded slowly. My dad, he worked for a big company. They made things that could help people, but some people wanted to use them to hurt others. Maggie waited, giving him the space to continue. They called it Project Phoenix. Eli said quietly. It was secret. Dad didn't want anyone to find out, but some people tried to steal it. They came after us. Maggie's heart tightened. That's why you've been running. Eli nodded, eyes glistening. We had to hide. I got separated. I didn't know where to go. I was hungry and scared. Meanwhile, Agent Carter and her team worked tirelessly to piece together Eli's past and the threats looming over them. Surveillance footage, intercepted communications, and shadowy contacts painted a grim picture. There's a faction inside the government that wants to control Project Phoenix, Agent Carter explained. During a briefing, they're ruthless. They won't stop until they get their hands on the data Eli carries in his mind. Maggie was stunned. Data in his mind. How was that possible? Your father? He must have done something to protect the information. Carter continued. We believe Eli is the only key to unlocking it safely. Maggie clenched her fists. So he's like a walking vault. Exactly, and that makes him a target. Days passed and the threat grew closer. Strange noises in the woods, unfamiliar faces watching from afar, encrypted messages hinting at betrayal. One night, Maggie was jolted awake by the sound of breaking glass. She grabbed a flashlight and moved cautiously toward the source. Outside, shadows flitted between the trees. The safe house was no longer safe. Get Eli, Carter's voice crackled over the radio. We're under attack. Heart pounding, Maggie rushed inside to find Eli awake and frightened. We have to move, now. They dashed through the back, door into the thick woods. The cold night pressing in around them. Agents followed close behind, leading them to a hidden trail. The SUV was waiting on a dirt road, engines roaring. They jumped in, the vehicle speeding away, as gunshots echoed behind them. Back on the move, Maggie sat beside Eli, who trembled but was silent. She reached out, squeezing his hand. We'll keep you safe, no matter what. Eli looked up, eyes shining. Thank you. But Maggie knew the road ahead was dangerous. The more they learned, the deeper they sank into a world of secrets and lies. A week later, a new lead surfaced, a contact who claimed to have information about Project Phoenix and the people chasing Eli. We have to meet them, Agent Carter said. It's risky, but it might be our only chance. Maggie and Eli agreed. They boarded another black SUV, the tension thick in the air. The rendezvous was in a secluded warehouse on the outskirts of the city. Inside, a man stepped forward, his face shadowed but his voice steady. You're playing with fire, he warned. Project Phoenix isn't just technology. It's a weapon, and people will kill to control it. Maggie's mind reeled. Could she trust this stranger? Before she could respond, a loud explosion rocked the building, alarms blared, and chaos erupted. Get out! Now! The man shouted. Gunfire and screams filled the air as Maggie, Eli, and the agents fought to escape. The warehouse was engulfed in smoke and fire, a deadly trap closing in. In the chaos, Eli was separated from Maggie. She heard his terrified cries but couldn't reach him through the smoke and flames. Eli! She shouted, desperation fueling her every step. Suddenly, a hand grabbed hers. It was Agent Carter. We have to move. Now! Reluctantly, Maggie let go, her heart shattering as Eli disappeared into the chaos. Outside, safe but shaken, Maggie stared at the burning warehouse. Eli was gone. We have to find him, she said fiercely. No matter what, Agent Carter nodded grimly. This isn't over, not by a long shot. That night, Maggie sat alone in a dimly lit room, her mind racing. The boy she fed in a small diner was now at the center of a deadly game, one that stretched far beyond anything she could have imagined. The quiet waitress was gone. In her place was someone ready to fight for a child she barely knew but already loved, and the mystery of Project Phoenix was only beginning to unravel. Maggie sat in the dimly lit room, the glow of the city lights casting shadows across her face. The weight of the past weeks pressed heavily on her shoulders, but there was no time for rest. Eli was still missing. The boy she had fed, protected, and come to care for, had vanished into a dangerous world she barely understood. She clenched, her fists, eyes fixed on the blinking cursor of her phone's messaging app. Agent Carter had gone silent after the warehouse attack, and no one knew where Eli was, or if he was even alive. The silence was suffocating. A flicker of hope. Then, just as Maggie was about to lose hope, a message appeared on her encrypted phone. "He's alive. Meet me at the old train station, midnight." No name, no explanation, just a lifeline. Maggie's heart pounded. Could she trust it? After everything, could anyone be trusted? She knew she had to try. The midnight meeting. The train station was a relic from another time. Crumbling walls, flickering lights, and an eerie quiet that swallowed every sound. Maggie arrived early, nerves twisting in her stomach. Minutes later, a figure emerged from the shadows. A woman, tall and composed, with sharp eyes that seemed to pierce through the darkness. "I'm Lana," the woman said quietly. "I was part of the project once." Maggie's pulse quickened. "Where is Eli?" Lana glanced around nervously. "Safe for now, but not for long. They're closing in. You need to get him before it's too late." "Who?" Maggie demanded. "People who want to control the Phoenix technology, no matter the cost. They won't stop until Eli is theirs." A race against time. With Lana's help, Maggie learned that Eli was being held in a hidden facility outside the city. It was guarded by private security, armed and dangerous, but it was their only chance. They couldn't waste a second. A plan formed quickly. Maggie would sneak into the facility with Lana's guidance, while the agents created a diversion. Every step was risky. Every second could be their last. Inside the facility, the cold, sterile halls of the facility echoed with distant footsteps and the buzz of fluorescent lights. Maggie's heart hammered as she moved cautiously, the memories of the boys frightened, pace spurring her forward. Finally, she found the room, a small cell with a single figure curled up on the floor. "Eli! Eli!" Maggie whispered, rushing forward. He looked up, eyes wide but filled with relief. "I knew you'd come," he said softly. Quickly, she helped him to his feet, her arms wrapping around him tightly. Escape and confrontation, just as they were about to leave. Alarms blared. The security team was onto them. Gunshots rang out and chaos erupted. Maggie held Eli close as they sprinted through the labyrinth of corridors, dodging guards and narrowly avoiding capture. They burst outside to find Lana waiting with a vehicle. The engine roared to life as they sped away, the facility shrinking behind them in a cloud of smoke. The truth revealed. In the safety of their hideout, Lana revealed the full story. Project Phoenix isn't just a weapon, she explained. It's a revolutionary technology designed to heal, to save lives. Your father wanted to protect it from those who'd abuse it. Maggie looked at Eli, who listened intently. But, Lana continued, there's a darker side. The technology can also be used to control minds, to manipulate. That's why the wrong people want it. Eli's voice trembled. My dad gave me the knowledge to protect it, but I'm just a kid. You're more than that, Maggie said firmly. You're brave, and we'll make sure the world knows the truth. A new beginning. With Lana and the agent's help, Maggie and Eli went public with their story. The media storm was immediate. Questions, debates, and an outpouring of support. People saw Eli not as a target or a weapon, but as a symbol of hope and resilience. Maggie watched as the boy who once sat silently at a diner table found a new voice, a new life. Closure. Months later, Maggie stood outside the diner where it all began. The black SUVs were gone, replaced by the familiar hum of everyday life. Eli was safe, protected by new allies and surrounded by people who cared. Maggie smiled, remembering how a simple act of kindness had changed everything. Sometimes the smallest gestures could spark the greatest revolutions. The end.